Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Regional and Rural Voice Solutions webinar today. My name is Lance McCall, the Global Campaign Manager here at Ribbon, and I appreciate you joining us here today on Bright Talk. Today, we have Jeff Bolger and David Doherty, Systems Engineering Consultant for Ribbon, as well as Jamie Gibson, VP of Sales Engineering, on with us. So thank you to all of them for being on with us today. I wanted to point out the Ask a Question box, which is located just below the slides that Jeff is sharing. So just scroll down a little bit to see that section, and you can ask us any questions you may have right there. We really love to hear from you throughout the webinar. So we have our staff monitoring those questions, and we'll circle back towards the end of the webinar to answer any of those questions for you. That's really all I have for now. Short and simple. I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Jeff, who's going to get us started. So Jeff, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Lance. I appreciate it. And I'll add my welcome as well. Thank you all for taking some time to join us. And hopefully it'll be a good session where you'll learn a little bit about Ribbon and what we offer for voice solutions in the regional and the rural market space. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of information that you all may know. I'm not exactly sure who's on. I know a lot of folks, there's well over 100 people that have registered. And I know some probably know about Ribbon, some may not. So the intent is for this first slide here to kind of make sure everybody understands Ribbon has a long heritage in what we call the network transformation space. And network transformation is sort of the solution that Ribbon uses when we talk about doing modernization of your network, either all or in part. And that expertise comes from some of the acquisitions that Ribbon has done over the years. For those of you that don't know, Ribbon was established in 2017 with the merger of Genband and Sonus Networks, and each of those companies bringing products into this network transformation portfolio that we'll talk about. And prior to that, Genband, as you may remember, purchased assets from Nortel Networks that specifically were involved with network modernization, or back then they called it CVAS. So not only do we have a lot of the Nortel products in the portfolio, but we have a lot of the people, not only from Nortel, but from Genband and Sonus, and then the acquisitions that were done after Ribbon was created. So the whole point is that Ribbon has, over time, garnered a large portfolio of various products that can be used when you're talking about replacing your voice network or modifying your voice network to offer new capabilities and services. So, we've got a long history, more than just, the last few years that Ribbon itself has been a company. And given that, we really feel like we have a lot of expertise in understanding what customers have as challenges. So a lot of you folks may understand, the dollars and cents. A lot of you have probably pivoted from offering voice as your primary leading offer, and now you focus on adding broadband and offering services that are broadband centric and not as much voice centric. And you have a subscriber base that's been declining, or maybe you have different services that you're offering, or maybe you're focused on a competitive part of your network as opposed to the regulated side. Those sorts of things are all contributing to challenges that service providers see today. So is it effective, or how do I most effectively offer voice so that I make an effective rate of return that's acceptable to me? When I deploy, is it better for me to use purpose-built hardware or virtualized hardware? If it's virtualized, do I put it into a private cloud that I have access to today? Or do I have that in somebody else's cloud, like in Amazon, in AWS, as an example? What's the best way to deploy? Do I have my IT folks run everything? Do I have my telephony department run it like it always has? Those sorts of things are kind of hard for a lot of companies to come to grips with. And then lastly, the people problem. And it's not necessarily a problem with the people that you have. it's a problem with keeping the people that you have, who a lot of them are at retirement age, or attracting new talent into your company. We have a lot of customers that tell us they have a hard time attracting folks that have the technical expertise or the knowledge or even the willingness to learn. And just having people to run and administer the network can be challenging to a lot of companies. So, there's a lot of different challenges that service providers have to deal with. And using our expertise and knowing what these problems are, Ribbon's been dealing with this for a long time. And as I mentioned, even prior to Ribbon, there's been a lot of work over the years by Ribbon and Genband and Nortel, excuse me, to be able to address network transformation. So we've literally migrated millions and millions of ports, that both lines and trunks, with customers across the world. You can see number of customers, number of offices that have been collapsed, number of different switches that have been migrated from as what we call the donor switch, number of lines that have been groomed as part of those migrations. So, Ribbon as a company has really been focused on network transformation and has the expertise and has been doing that for many, many years. So what we've done with these acquisitions and over time with our expertise is we've amassed our products into a group of products that we call, or we focus generically as, a network transformation portfolio. And these products do different things. And you can see the functions listed on the left-hand side, things like soft switch that everybody is aware of. And we've got various soft switches in our portfolio. Application servers, session border controllers, media gateways, and so forth. Those functionalities are there. We deploy them independently, so you don't necessarily have to buy all of these as part of a single solution. You can buy bits and pieces. We have session border controllers that work with other companies' soft switches. We have gateways that work with Ribbon products of various types, so forth. But the key is we take these Ribbon products, and based on your requirements of your network, we put them together into solutions that are designed for the space that you're in. And specifically, for example, residential services and business services, and whether that's on a regulated environment or a non-regulated environment, we address both of those. Whether your network is fixed or whether it's mobile, and maybe you have an IMS network and you have wireless subscribers as well as an ILEC environment. Same thing with doing just regular SIP trunking out to PBXs. And then products that come along and provide value. So things like analytics and call trust and being able to meet the regulatory mandates for stir shaken as an example. Those are examples of different products and services that are solutions in the portfolio that can be mixed and matched to meet the requirements that you may have specifically. So I'm going to talk a second or provide a slide for each of the products here, and we'll go into it in a whole lot more detail, not a whole lot more detail, but we can go in a whole lot more detail if you would like, as part of a separate offline discussion. So, hopefully this is just designed to stir some interest within your company of what Ribbon can offer and the breadth of the portfolio and that sort of thing. But we would love to be able to talk with you more about your specific network and your specific requirements. Starting off with the C20, a lot of you guys probably know this is Ribbon's flagship soft switch. It's focused on the class 4 and the class 5 service sets, and it's deployed widely throughout the world. The latest version of it is a virtualized product, meaning that it's virtualized architecture. It's designed to be deployed in a virtualized network environment using off-the-shelf server hardware. Also could be in a public cloud type environment. But basically it provides a rich set of features for both business and voice subscribers, and it's targeted for everybody from the large tier 1 providers all the way down to the smaller rural operators of North America, as an example. It's deployed internationally as well. I'm not sure the mix of folks on the call here, but certainly it's a product that can be delivered for that whole gamut. And as you can see from some of the capacity numbers, there's plenty of capacity in terms of lines and trunks to be able to support pretty much any customer that's out there. Along with that, and probably of more interest, is Ribbon's application server. Our application server is a native SIP registrar that provides SIP-based services to endpoints that speak SIP. So it can be deployed both as a standalone, meaning that it's there providing call control and those types of feature functionality and routing and that sort of thing by itself for SIP clients, or it can be deployed in conjunction with the C20 as the C20's application device or application peripheral. So what that means is essentially it's providing the SIP registrar capability as a peripheral on the C20 in that case. So, and we've got customers that have both of those scenarios deployed. It works well in both of those. But based on the feedback that we've seen, really we feel like the application server is where a lot of the market is moving towards. And what I mean by that is SIP seems to be the protocol that has become the general de facto standard. And true, we do still have customers with H.248 and MGCP. We definitely run into those. But it seems like SIP is definitely the application or the protocol that most customers are evolving toward. So from our perspective, the application server is really the product that can be most useful when you look out to the future. And again, it's a virtualized product, can be deployed on servers that are existing in your network, in a VMware environment, for example, or a KVM hypervisor environment, as an example. It can be deployed in a public cloud. It really depends upon how you want to do it. Survivability is an option. You can do geo survivability and have the applications deployed in different physical locations. You can do something called distributed, which is, I'll talk about that in a little bit here, but that's the ability for a portion of the application server called the session manager to be deployed in remote locations. And that really comes in handy when you talk about wanting to optimize your network and keep the media local in a remote area, or if you have a partnership with a company and you want to host them, you can have that that session management capability deployed remotely. And it really makes it handy from a network perspective because you have different alternatives to deploy to increase your utilization and your optimization of bandwidth and how you're actually delivering services and making sure that those services are redundant and available to your customers in your network. We also have the ability with the application server to interface with third-party products. So we're working on a partnership with Innovative Systems to use their AP Max. I know a lot of you folks are probably familiar with Innovative, and as you know, Ribbon's had a relationship with Innovative for many, many years, and the AP Max is widely deployed and used with products, especially Ribbon C15. But it does provide some capabilities that a lot of folks are interested in. So things like end device management. And for those of you that are doing VoIP today, you know that the ability to manage the IP phones is a very important thing. The more you have, the more you have to worry about keeping firmware up to date, managing and storing configurations for the soft clients. Doing zero-touch provisioning is obviously something that most folks want to do to avoid a truck roll. So those types of device management capabilities are always in demand. So that's something that we can offer through the partnership. Also, the ability for portals to be provided. Some companies love portals and want customers to do their own management. Other ones don't. Other ones want to manage and control that experience because it makes it less apt for errors from the end users to be introduced into the network by doing things in the portals that they either can't do or creating issues of administration that they're just not used to seeing. And then same things with like unified communications, transcription, or speech to text, things like that. There's lots of different capabilities that the application server can support, either inherently or with partner products or even with third-party products. So again, we mix and match the requirements based on what you need to deploy in your network and your specific requirements. As far as session border controllers are concerned, this again has been something that Ribbon has had for a long time. But Ribbon does have two different portfolios of session border controllers that fall into this network transformation bucket. One is what we call the service provider core, or our core SBCs, and the other is more of an edge SBC. From the core side, those are products that are really designed to be placed into the core of the network, whether it's a data center or a central office. They're really designed to do things like interface to carriers or interface to PBXs, interface to interconnection circuits of some type. And as you can see from a session perspective, the boxes can support thousands of sessions simultaneously. And then they can be deployed in different redundant configurations. High availability is what we list here. That's typically the whole idea of an active and a standby. So you can see the 5400, the 7000, and even our virtualized version, the SBC SWE or software edition, supports those capabilities as well. It's essentially the same code base, but you have the ability to deliver using purpose-built hardware with the 5400 and the 7000, and then a virtualized deployment, again, using your own environment or a public cloud environment, and then utilize that same type of feature set to your customers or to your interconnect carriers, to your access devices that may be registering directly with these SBCs. But certainly it's a product that's used to complement, and a very important product when you're offering voice from your network. And then on the edge side, generally what we run into and what we see is products that are called EdgeMark in our portfolio. And the reason they're called EdgeMark is they're demarcation points that sit on the edge of your network. So typically these are customer premise equipment, and they do different functions. The 300 series is generally an ATA of some type that can be deployed in the field. It can do zero-touch provisioning, but it's fairly limited in terms of the capabilities it offers to an ATA-type environment. The 2900, the 6000, and there's a few others. The 2900 and the 6000 are the most popular. But essentially what they provide is a smaller number of sessions than what the core boxes provide, but they sit at the edge of the network via a WAN interface of some type, and then provide functions to the subtended LAN devices that are connected to it. So typically you'll have a LAN with VoIP phones sitting on it, and those phones can be powered over Ethernet with these boxes. You can also have analog devices on some of these boxes that can be interfaced with FXO or FXS circuits. You also have some that can do PRI. And the boxes can do things like session border control, call admission control, some routing, some policy type stuff, but also zero-touch provisioning. And what's not listed here is the ability to do local survivability. So if you would lose a LAN connection to a host, like an application server, for example, the devices that are sitting behind the EdgeMark have the ability to call locally or even call out with those FXO, FXS circuits to a backdoor connection. So you can maintain some types of interfaces out to the rest of the world. So they're very widely deployed. We've got a lot of customers that use them. And especially from a hosted VoIP perspective, they're very much a complementary product to provide security, provisioning, troubleshooting capabilities, and then that survivability capability. So, and again, they don't go with the overall. You don't have to buy them as part of the overall, but they can be deployed with a third-party cloud service that you offer today. So kind of keep that in mind as well. As far as media gateways are concerned, Ribbon offers several. And when I talk about these media gateways, think of these as gateways between the TDM world and the IP world. So essentially on the IP side, you're typically talking to some sort of a soft switch or an application server, and those devices are speaking some sort of an IP protocol. On the other side, you're either interfacing to TDM lines or TDM trunks. So with the G6, for example, that's sort of our medium-sized gateway. It has various types of interfaces, T1, DS3, OC3, they're the most popular ones. And you can obviously just provision the amount of cards you need to meet those specific requirements. And then, of course, there's different redundancy schemes you can provide, like a 1+1 or an N+1 or a pool type environment for redundancy. But they're typically used for things like PRI, GR303 aggregation, TR08 if you have any of that, ISUP trunking, and then the G6 also provides emergency standalone capability, which again, for customers that are doing hosted voice or in remote locations, especially when you're talking about offices that are being collapsed into a smaller number of offices, the ability to have emergency standalone capability is important. So the devices hanging off of the G6 on the TDM side, you can still maintain the ability for some level of calling within those devices in that type scenario if you lose connectivity to the rest of the world. If you look at the G5, that's sort of the next level down. The G5 is our line access gateway, and specifically the cards in it are interfaced to copper loops. So if you have coin lines, POTS lines, P-phone lines, those sorts of line requirements, we have cards that fit in that chassis to provide those capabilities. And then on the upstream side, you have a SIP interface or a GR303 interface. So for example, the G5 may work directly into the G6 using GR303, if that's something that works for that particular scenario. You could have the G5 work directly back into a call controller of some type using a SIP interface. So we see this as being a very good product for narrowband voice replacement. And a lot of you folks may have seen the press release Ribbon did a month or so ago talking about Verizon and their use of the G5 for end office replacements. So it's a product that's been widely deployed. It's used quite a bit and has a lot of usefulness because, as you guys know, there's a lot of copper still in the ground and a lot of copper loops that are still in customers' networks. And then down along the bottom are the small and sort of the medium density trunk gateways that we offer. These are Telco Bridges products that you may be familiar with. We resell their 800 and 3200 products. The 800 being the very small one. They have a version that can do 8 T1s, and then they have another version of it that will do 16 T1s. And then with the TMG 3200, there's a T1, a DS3, and an OC3 version. And you license the number of ports you need in both the 800 and the 3200. So you're not essentially buying a bunch of capacity that you don't need. You can buy the capacity that you do need and then license up as you grow. But in both cases, the boxes can be used for ISUP trunking, PRI, MF trunks, and then also SIGTRAN. We've got a lot of folks that not really a sort of a requirement for network transformation, but we do have a lot of folks with SS7 links, and they use TDM connections to their A-Link provider, and they're wanting to move to IP using SIGTRAN. So the SIGTRAN is typically delivered via telco bridges boxes. So outside of any of this, or even as part of a network transformation, we can support SIGTRAN for SS7 as part of the same activity, or independent, either way. For some of you that have wireless, I know there's not a lot in our space typically, but for those of you that do have IMS networks, Ribbon offers a cloud-native IMS solution. And as you can see, it involves not only the IMS core and the various, alphabet soup of different interfaces that are involved with IMS, but also different of the products you do recognize can be utilized in an IMS environment, like the Ribbon SBCs, for example, for the various CSCF capabilities, the transcoding gateway, the IBCF capability as an example. So those products can be used in the IMS or in a wireless IMS network, just like they could be in a regular wireline network. We also have Ribbon Analytics that can be deployed to provide intelligence and information that can be used to help troubleshoot and to help even monetize some of the information that's coming out of your network. And I'll talk about analytics and some of that in a little bit more detail, but it's one of those products that can be added on to your IMS network and help you not only from a maintenance and a management perspective, but also garner additional information that you can use to be proactive in terms of capacity requirements and troubleshooting and quality and even monetization on the wireless side. As you guys know, there's lots of FCC regulations that have been floating around over the last year. Stir shaken has been something that's and robocall mitigation in general has kind of faded from the limelight with the deadline about a year ago now. But Ribbon has services called Call Trust that can provide for various regulatory requirements, things like stir shaken and the signing and verification that are provided there, and then robocall mitigation in general. Ribbon has a portfolio called Call Trust. It utilizes a cloud that Ribbon has called Identity Hub, and there's different services on the Identity Hub that you can subscribe to be able to do things like reputation scoring to allow you to do robocall mitigation more effectively, or to do signing and verification as part of your normal standard stir shaken architecture. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that, but again, these are services that you would subscribe to. Ribbon offers them as a subscription-based service. We can, with stir shaken, actually do that signing and verification on an on-prem deployment. Most customers don't do that. They find it much more economical to use the subscription service, but that capability is available as something you can put into your network. But anyway, these services are available. They can be deployed as part of your network transformation. They can be deployed outside of your network transformation. Ribbon can even work with third-party robocall mitigation and stir shaken type services. So again, we're flexible and we meet the needs of what your requirements are for your network. And then when you get to management, so network management is something that can really span a lot of topics. Ribbon has some products that deal with or look at capabilities that you would typically use in your network. So the first one I've got listed there is called RAMP. That stands for Ribbon Application Management Platform. And that's Ribbon's consolidated element management functionality that uses and manages various products in the Ribbon portfolio. So it's a single application that's used for things like fault management and reporting. Some of the products have the ability to be provisioned. It's a fairly new product, fairly new deployment, probably the last 18 months or so. So we're still adding products to the portfolio for RAMP, but essentially it's deployed to do those types of element management and even reporting, and some of the functionality and troubleshooting capabilities are available with the RAMP product. The idea is, and where we're moving towards, is having some sort of a single pane of glass that you can utilize to be able to manage the elements that are deployed in your network. So that said, the second one is Ribbon Analytics. And Analytics is a product that is specifically geared towards integrating insights from the deployed products in your solution. So I mentioned that RAMP can do some reporting and some utilization reporting. And there's a little bit of overlap there between RAMP and Analytics. But Analytics is specifically designed to be able to take that information and go way beyond what the RAMP product will do. So not only can it take things like CDRs from SBCs or PCAP files from a soft switch as examples, but you can take that information and use it for doing all sorts of advanced analysis and reporting and incident detection and mitigation, troubleshooting, capacity utilization and planning, things like most probable cause, fraud alerting, quality of service monitoring, things like that. It's really a big data engine that can be deployed, again, as part of, it's virtualized, so it can be on the same exact hardware that you have, and you can access it from your OAM&P network. But you can use and ingest data from various devices, even some third-party devices, ingest that information and get a more holistic view of what your network is doing and being able to troubleshoot and report and even plan using that data. That's the whole point of analytics. And again, it can be deployed separately. We've got customers that have it deployed with just an SBC. We've got customers with C15 and SBC. And C20 and lots of different mixtures of those products. But the key is that it's used to be able to deliver those capabilities. And then we have a product for provisioning and portals, again, that can be delivered for use to have end subscribers do their own provisioning of services, or to have maybe a Centrex group manager manage and be able to administer their own group, or even to have a service provider have some sort of a standard portal that they can use for provisioning. A lot of folks have their own, so certainly we support APIs on our products. So if you have a third-party product that you want to use for provisioning, there's certainly API interfaces, and we probably have interfaced and tested with a lot of the products that are used for things like billing and provisioning and those sorts of things. So, but we do have a product to offer for that, for those that would want one. And then lastly, I'll mention Leap. Again, it's a newer product that Ribbon has deployed, but it's essentially AI technology that's used to learn and build test cases based on real life data that a customer has in their network. And it's really designed to be used to automate generation and execution of test cases and regression testing in respect to software upgrades. So it's really used in larger networks that have multiple SBCs, multiple PSX nodes, that sort of thing. So we don't see it in the more regional and rural spaces, but we do have the ability for customers that have that to be able to take a product like Leap and be able to use this artificial intelligence capability to use real life test cases to do their own test case acceptance testing and regression testing when new software releases are introduced into the network. So I talked about, I'd speak about analytics. So I'm going to spend just a minute here talking about analytics in a little bit more detail. I mentioned the capabilities that it can provide, but essentially what you have is in your network different devices that are deployed, whether they're voice, wireless, IP type devices, and they can be CPE equipment, session border controllers, voice equipment, and so forth. All of these devices can be deployed in your network, and those all have some sort of capability to provide measurement data of some type. And the way analytics works is it can take those inputs from those devices and ingest them and utilize applications or even a lot of inherent capability that analytics has to be able to generate actions that are input on the other side. And then action could be something as simple as an alert that gets generated when a threshold is crossed. So for example, if there's an endpoint making calls too frequently, and you suspect it might be robocall. You can generate based on a threshold, you can generate an alert and have that particular endpoint throttled down, or maybe put into a timeout where it can't generate new calls for 30 minutes or so. Or you can do things like generating reports, like show me over the last week, the top 10 calling numbers and the top 10 call ed numbers. Or for things like if you have a robocall mitigation request where somebody is looking for a traceback information, you can use this, or a quality of service troubleshooting request. I made a call last Tuesday and the quality was terrible. I couldn't understand what the people were saying, or somebody called in and complained that they were dialing these digits and they couldn't get to the right number. Those sorts of information can be utilized using searches in analytics, and then using the data that's in analytics, you can go in and find the specific call and look at all the different signaling information and build reports that can be populated and distributed routinely. So you have all of those capabilities to utilize all of the information that's in there, and there's lots and lots of different flexibility that's available for doing different databases and monitoring and that sort of thing. But the other key thing about analytics is it's not just take information in, do a little bit with it, and then spit out what the actions are. There's also this ability to do a feedback mechanism. So some of the products actually have the ability to accept from analytics feedback, or like for example, I mentioned earlier, put this endpoint in a call admission control state, or put it in a situation where you're not able to generate more than X number of calls per minute, or per hour, that sort of thing. And that can be done automatically. So not only can it let you know that this call is creating an issue and a threshold's been crossed, but some of the products have the ability to utilize this feedback mechanism to automatically address some of the issues that are seen. And that can be extremely powerful. So going through the products, you can see, and hopefully I've provided enough for you to understand that there's lots and lots of capabilities that each of these products provide, and there's a lot of products in the portfolio. But what does it all mean? Well, if you go and we try to put it all together, what we do is we look at your requirements and we take our portfolio and we try to match it with those requirements. So the first example here is sort of a high-level logical view of a replacement. And in this particular case, we're using C20, but generally speaking, when you're looking at replacing a network of some type or elements in a network, there's two things you can do. One is called replace, the other one is called overlay. And I'll talk about replace first. So in this particular scenario, we're replacing the existing infrastructure that's there today. And what that means is we're taking the TDM interfaces and the TDM traffic, as well as the IP traffic and the IP interfaces, and we're moving them to a new platform. So you have the C20 with the application server on the left-hand side. It can still have SS7 connectivity to the rest of the world. You can do SIGTRAN if you want to, but then below it, you can have a gateway. and that gateway can talk to your TDM interfaces, whether they're GR303 based lines or PRIs or regular TDM ISUP trunks. Those types of interfaces are still retained. And then on the IP side, you have SIP trunks that can connect typically to a session border controller. And then the session border controller provides that security and the policy and the routing type information for things like trunks to various carriers you may have, or PBXs, or IP DLCs of various types. Or if you want to, you can even put gateways, TDM trunk gateways that interface on the IP side of your network. So all of those capabilities are available, and they can be managed by RAMP, and you can have analytics involved to be able to measure what's going on and look at the traffic and the utilization and those sorts of things. But the key is this is one way to go about doing a network transformation, is to replace what's there today. The second way, like I mentioned, is an overlay. And typically we see this with our application server. So the example I use is this. And with the overlay, you're actually putting in this case, an application server next to what's there. So you're still utilizing your existing switching environment. It still may have TDM interfaces. It may even have IP interfaces today. But what you're utilizing is an interface to the application server, which is SIP, since the application server is native SIP. You run SIP trunks to it, and then it becomes a platform you use to cap and grow your traffic. So you can move and migrate your GR303 lines over to an IP DLC, for example, that would be registered with the application server. And as you can see, the rest of the network, the IP side of the network, is still there if you have it. If not, you're building out to that as an architecture or a sort of a reference architecture. So those types of capabilities are available. And a lot of folks like this because it's less intrusive. So you essentially turn the existing switch into a line or trunk gateway, or both. And you leave it in place until you don't have a need for it anymore. So you essentially now have the ability to manage and control your own migration and your own growth as you need to move on to another platform. So again, very attractive to some customers from that respect. But that's to say, you can also do a replacement using an application server. The only thing you have to worry about in that scenario is you're kind of restricted to the protocols you can support. Since the application server is SIP, you don't have the ability to support MGCP or H.248 or even TDM lines, as an example. So essentially what you're doing is you're using the application server as the SIP registrar, and you're still utilizing all of those IP devices in your network. But as long as everything speaks SIP, or in the case of TDM trunks, as long as those can be converted to SIP, or that gateway can be managed by SIP, you can run your whole network on an application server and replace your network with the application server. But again, it's subject to those constraints. I mentioned earlier the application server has the ability to do some survivability. This slide goes into it in a little bit more detail. Essentially, the application server is virtualized, and it's made up of various different applications. One of them is called session management, and session management is really the key that provides for the SIP registration and the media capability, things like announcements and conferencing and things like that. Those applications, since they're virtualized, can actually be deployed remote from those other applications. So in service provider 2 or site 2 or remote provider 2, the site number 2 that I've got listed, that's an example where you may have this session management capability remotely located because it provides, number one, the ability to keep the registrations local and to keep the media local with the SBC that's there, and the added benefit of providing an optimization by not having to go back with traffic to the host, but also the survivability capability is there, because if you lose the link between the host and site 2, then calls are still going to process because that session manager is local to that site. So it makes it really handy in a situation where you as a service provider may have remote locations, or you may have a situation where you have a company down the street or down the road or on the other side of the county or the next state over that you have an agreement with, that you want to host service for them. Or you may even want to go into business and commercially offer your site as a hosted service to other providers. So those types of scenarios are available with this type of architecture. You can have everything from just a session border controller if a site only needs to have the media local and they're confident in their redundancy capability. Or in site number 3, you can even augment that and have a TDM gateway at that site to maintain that local TDM interface. So all of those capabilities can be provided using this distributed architecture. So it's very powerful in that respect. So lastly, I'll kind of wrap up here by saying, hopefully you've gotten a sense of Ribbon. And, even though Ribbon was formed in 2017, our legacy and our heritage goes way back beyond that. So we've got lots of experience and a lot of products in the portfolio, and we have the ability to utilize our resources, not only from a product, but from an employee and a resource perspective within the company, to be able to deliver a solution that's tailored for your requirements, be it a whole new replacement, be it an overlay, or even just a session border controller for a situation where you have a third-party hosted service that you want to deploy. Ribbon can provide all of those capabilities to your voice network with our portfolio, utilizing the service and the expertise that we offer. So who do you get in touch with? Well, points of contact. Obviously, your Ribbon sales manager. Hopefully everybody knows who their Ribbon sales manager is. They're the person to reach out to. And if you don't know, for whatever reason, reach out to Elizabeth Page. A lot of you folks know her. She's the regional sales director. So all of the sales folks work up through her. She'll definitely put you in touch with the right person. You can also reach out to myself or my counterpart, Dave Doherty. Both of us support Elizabeth and her team for the products that we've talked about today. So we get involved with a lot of discussions like this. We can go deeper in network design, help you understand the products and their capabilities, doing demonstrations, that sort of thing. So, feel free to reach out to any of us if you do have any sort of additional questions. And we really do hope that you'll reach out and we'll be hearing from you, because we really feel like Ribbon has a great portfolio, and it's really designed for folks that potentially, have the need to either supplement what they have or replace what they have. So we hope to hear from you. So Lance, I guess I'll turn it over back to you.
Sure.
That's all I have prepared.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. And thanks everybody for being on here. And, a lot of good questions have come through, and I know David and Jamie have been answering those on the back end. So thank you again for your participation and engagement and asking your questions. A few others that have popped through, and I thought we could talk about these, verbally for everybody else on the call. One of the questions, this is the first time I've seen information on Ribbon's IMS core. So is that something new? Is that like a new product from Ribbon, or can you explain that?
Is that for specifically for?
It's for anybody. It was a question that came through that this is the first time this individual has seen Ribbon's IMS core mentioned, and they just want to know if that is something new.
I think so. Yeah. I know Jamie and David have been involved with some of the deployments recently. We've had, I know in the US, we've had a deployment, or we actually have a customer just recently sign up for a deployment and a replacement of their existing network. So yes, we do have a partnership in that space, and we've been doing it, I think, internationally more, but it is a solution that Ribbon has that you're probably gonna be seeing more as we get into that space. So yes, it is fairly new, and as far as our offering in the US.
Okay, great. Another question that came through is, I have a third-party SBC and a third-party stir-shaken solution. So the question is, can I continue to use those with a Ribbon solution? And I assume I don't need to deploy all the elements covered.
Yeah, that's correct. So I think I mentioned it a couple times in the presentation. All of the products that are in here are not a package deal. In other words, you don't have to buy everything. So we've got lots of customers that have a Ribbon soft switch and a third-party SBC, or they have a Ribbon SBC and a Ribbon soft switch, but they also utilize a third-party stir-shaken solution. So yes, you can definitely mix and match those services. And that's one of the strengths of Ribbon's portfolio is we have a wide portfolio, but it's agnostic in a lot of respects so that it will work with other standards-based equipment or other standards-based services.
Very good. Thanks for that. Another question, how much support can Ribbon provide in helping migrating lines? Do you offer turnkey migration services or anything additional there?
We do. So that's something that kind of varies. We don't see that a whole lot when we talk about an overlay, but generally speaking, Ribbon has the ability to offer everything from assistance or an assisted type migration where we have subject matter experts that can be deployed to help a customer migrate a gateway at a time, for example. And we do, on the other end, offer the ability for Ribbon to provide what we call formal migration services. So some of you folks may have seen that or may have done it with some of the soft switches, but in those scenarios, we actually map line and feature data to the new platform, and we'll actually physically migrate the lines and migrate the trunks, and those can be done in a flash cut during a single maintenance window if the system is small enough, or they can be done in a phased environment where you're cutting a certain number of lines and trunks during a maintenance window, and then you come back and do another amount the next week, and so forth. So yes, those types of services are available. They require a lot of information and a lot of planning, and that's typically part of the services we provide. So, network planning, network migration planning, a lot of services around how to migrate, when to migrate, what to migrate, making sure everything is mapped correctly, that sort of thing. But yes, Ribbon can do that level of migration if needed.
Great. Another question here, can Ribbon provide the servers to host applications if they are needed?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Ribbon does resell. We're not extensive in terms of the servers that we offer. We do offer a couple different versions of Dell servers depending upon the application you want to deploy, but we also work with customers that have their own environment, provide their own servers. But yes, I would say yes. We just do not have. We're not like Best Buy. We don't have like a huge selection that you can pick from. We just have a couple that we resell.
Okay. And this question was specific to the application server and SIP phones, but you may have just answered it. The question was, do you only support Innovative, or are there other application servers that you work with for provisioning SIP phones?
There are others. I know we work with NISC. I know the AS. I know of a customer in Texas that works with NISC for provisioning, but we also interface with Ribbon's or with Innovative Systems Elation product for provisioning with another customer in North Carolina. So yes, there are other customers, and I'm sure there's other systems out there. But yes, we do work with third parties other than just Innovative.
Yeah, and Lance, I think I answered this question online. This is Jamie. We have numerous deployments with larger carriers that have other provisioning systems. Some of them are homegrown provisioning, and some of them are other third parties for the device as well as the AS. We have APIs that can provision the AS, so we can integrate with pretty much anybody's provisioning platform. And if there are specific ones that the customer wants us to talk about, we can address that with each customer. Many options.
Good. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Jeff. Maybe I have time for 2 more quick questions here before we're at the top of the hour. Does Ribbon have any GR303 does Ribbon have a GR303 to SIP gateway?
No. I wish we did, but we don't.
Okay, and last question. This is maybe a little bit more of a broad question, so it's probably a good one to end on. Can you outline a few common use cases for our analytics product?
Yeah, I talked about a lot of them. The strength of it, analytics is generally focused on troubleshooting. There's really 2 different, I look at it as sort of 2 different main ways, or at least from what I've seen in our portfolio. One is more of a troubleshooting and a management type role. And in that role, you're typically doing like troubleshooting, like responding to a call quality issue or a misdial issue or a call's not getting completed for whatever reason. So you have the ability to get in there and see the session border controller, see the carrier, SIP trunk, see this soft switch, for example, and look at the signaling between the two and look at the ladder diagram and that sort of thing. So, those types of things are typically very useful. So, and most folks I know want to have a consolidated way to see data from the various devices and see call flow information. So typically analytics is useful for that from a maintenance perspective. But secondarily, it can also be used for more preventative type stuff. Like I think I mentioned fraud as an example, where a PBX might get hacked, and then all of a sudden on the weekend, there's calls coming from this PBX to a foreign country. So that type of thing can be programmed in and can be looked for, and when it's encountered, there can be like a flag, a notification flag set. And then obviously there's an alerting that's done, but also you can set up a feedback mechanism and have that particular endpoint throttled down or shut down even if needed. So that's an example of a fraud case. So, generally speaking, those are 2 that come to mind real quickly, but I'm sure there's plenty of other ones that are subs of those. But just incident detection and mitigation, that's a real big one. A trunk group's down, for example. You'll typically get an alert or some sort of alarm, but you have the ability to see that and even look at utilization. So even if it's not down, you have the ability to look at time of day, like what time of day does this IP carrier not do real well? Maybe I need to change a route around that during a certain time. That sort of capability is there as well. So those are 3 that I can think of offhand.
Excellent. That was a great answer, and I think a good one to end on. So with that, maybe you can go back 1 slide and show that contact slide that we can. There we go. Yeah, that way people, as we end here, can take note of that and make any last minute, screenshots or take down some numbers if you want to reach out to us. But thank you all for joining today. Really appreciate the participation and the engagement. We've had some good questions and hopefully you got some good answers. At the end of the presentation later on this afternoon, you'll be getting an email from us with a link to this complete replay so you can watch it again, and feel free to reach out to us if you have other questions. You can reply to that email. There'll also be a copy of the slides, so look for that later this afternoon. And as always, we appreciate your time, and please look forward to the next webinar, hopefully coming pretty soon. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, folks.